Welcome to another episode of the Refugee Youth Changemakers, and this is the podcast that amplifies the stories and journeys of refugees who are not only serving but thriving in their different communities, and they are leading change in different refugee camps or even cities and communities where they live. And today I'm your host. My name is Prince, and in this space we're going to deep dive into the voices that might otherwise go unheard. So at Refugee Youth Changemakers, we believe in the power of youth to bring about transformative change, even in the most challenging circumstances. Our mission is very simple, and it is just to empower and amplify the voices of refugees. So today, we are going to host someone who has been hosting other people before in this very episode, and we are going to give her the chance to speak to us, to tell us her journey, to tell us her life and all that, but maybe to talk briefly about her. She has been my friend for a very long time, so I'm very excited that I will be hosting her today and actually to learn more about her life. She's also a co-founder at Refugee Youth Changemakers, so this means that whatever we're talking about, she has that deep understanding of what we are doing. So Solange is a graduate from Costa Rica, from a university called Earth University in South America, and she's a global sustainable leader. She has been seen in very many international conferences and national conferences. She's a very, very important person. So I'm actually going to give her a chance to introduce herself to us. So Solange, in brief, who are you and what can I understand if I heard your name somewhere?
Well, first of all, I would say your introduction is so humbling, and I feel truly honored to be hosted by you. And yeah, I'm Solange, originally from DRC, but born and raised in Rwanda. I'm an agronomic engineer. I'm also a refugee rights advocate and a co-founder of Refugee Youth Changemakers.
Okay, that's wonderful. I actually want to understand what the story behind the Refugee Youth Changemakers, because I also don't understand it as much as I belong here, but I don't understand how you guys came to build this organization, have its mission. You understand better the goals and all that, but maybe that is going to be a story for another day. So I will be asking you a few questions and you will be taking your time to answer, and this is going to be a very narrative podcast with you, so we want to understand you better. I'm actually very, very excited to hear you speak in this kind of a way. So maybe to go first, I'm going to ask you, can you walk us through your personal journey, freeing from Democratic Republic of Congo to finding yourself in Rwanda, and then you have been in those different international conferences at different stages, speaking, to earning yourself a degree in far away from Rwanda, far away from Democratic Republic of Congo. So can you tell us that story about you?
Wow, that's a great and deep question, and I think it's the very first time that I'm answering this, and yeah, I hope I can answer it better because I believe it's a very long story that I want to share briefly because I can't tell the whole story. I don't think we have time for that. But yeah, I'll try to summarize the whole story. Well, I was born and raised in Rwanda, but from Congolese parents. I grew up in Kiziba refugee camp, which is a refugee camp in western part of Rwanda. And growing up there, I would say life was normal because I never had the chance to experience any other kind of life rather than, in a refugee camp. But of course, growing up and getting to know the story of your parents, that's when you come to understand and to realize that actually you're living a life that you're not supposed to live. You're just living a life that you just don't have choice to decide or to choose any other type of life. And so I attended primary school like any other refugee in the camp. And I did well in national examination in primary 6. And so in Rwanda, I don't know if it's everywhere, but in Rwanda, when you get good grades, they orient you to a school, like a boarding school, whether in the same province or in a different province. So I was sent to a different district, but in the same province. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to that school because, well, usually many refugees don't really go to boarding school in junior high school. Because of course parents are not able to afford school fees, and sometimes you just even take it as normal because nobody has ever gone to boarding school. Okay, back then, I don't know if now they do that. So I kept studying in a refugee camp, but I think that moment I still carry it in my heart because I just felt like, betrayed, not by my parents, but I think maybe by life, because I really worked hard to get those good grades. I was the second in the whole school. And so I really thought that I deserved a good education, but unfortunately I couldn't. So I kept studying in a refugee camp for junior high school. And when I finished my junior high school, I got an opportunity to be sponsored by an organization called Acts for Rwanda. And I think that's when my life really changed, because I was given a fully funded scholarship. Everything was covered. And so I finally went to a boarding school. And I think that was the most exciting moment of my adulthood. Yeah.
I actually have a question to what you've been talking about. I just want to understand it better. You said you worked hard for your grades for you to go to a different school after you finished a certain level of education. In maybe a few words, can you explain to us how that working hard looks like? How did you even get to know that you really have to work hard? What was even the motivation to make you work hard if any other refugee student is really not finding it as a sense to work hard? What made you do that? What made you have that motivation?
I would say growing up, I always wanted to know, why are we in a refugee camp? Because of course I've never been to different places back then, but then I always wanted to know why us, why here. And so my parents, of course, told me the whole story of how they migrated from DRC to Rwanda. But one thing that really stayed with me was that people who were educated, people who, migrated but educated, they got jobs opportunities. They got job opportunities in Rwanda. And so some of them were, doctors, others were having great jobs. And so my mom could always say that the only thing that you cannot be taken away from is your mind and your education. And so I grew up thinking that, I have to work hard, because I never wanted my children to be born in a refugee camp, and I never wanted myself to become old in a refugee camp. So I think that was the motivation. So I always could really work hard, hoping that maybe education would take me somewhere.
Oh yeah, just like any other person, you work hard, but you're not sure what's going to happen, but you really have to work hard, just like any other refugee. I know I also did that, almost like a pretty same journey, but I really appreciate your work in working hard at such an early stage. That was very, very, I don't know, inspirational, I don't know, transformative, but it's really difficult for other people to do the same thing that you did. So you said you grew up in a refugee camp. You actually was born in a refugee camp, right? So I know refugee camps are really very delicate places for people to live. There's really hardships within people, very many people living within poor health, poor education, like you've just said. I want to ask you a question that is, about that. So growing up in a refugee camp, we know it comes generally with very many challenges, very many unique challenges. So what are some of those moments that shaped your identity? And both as a young girl and someone who is trying to make sure that the community grows to, from one level to another, as in terms of its development and maybe social service delivery, just like any other reader. So what are those, moments that made you realize that, oh yes, I'm a refugee and I need to work hard to make sure that this changes to this, from the wrong way to the right way?
Yeah, as I said, when you're young, you really can't understand the whole situation. Sometimes you even think that that's life for everyone. And so I would say that I started thinking about that intentionally when I went to boarding school, when I started my senior high school, because that's when you realize that, oh, I'm actually different. Other people have this and I don't have this. And you start realizing that, oh, there's actually biases around refugees. It's actually shameful, to say that I'm a refugee, even though I shouldn't really feel ashamed of that.
So
And so I would say that
the boarding school was out of the refugee camp?
yeah, so the boarding school was outside the refugee camp. So that's when you finally get to meet different people and you're like, so I'm vulnerable, I'm different. Actually, others, have this and I don't have it. So that's when I started realizing that. And also the perspective of the host communities about refugees, I think that's what really triggered my thoughts. And a lot of people think that refugees are poor, refugees are people who are not capable of doing something, they're not smart. So like studying in such environment has inspired me to prove people wrong, to show the world that, well, I am a refugee, but I can also score good grades. I am a refugee, but I can also lead. I am a refugee, but I can also have, other talents. So I would say that's when I started realizing that, I have to really work hard to make sure that people are not like I'm not proving them right, I'm proving them wrong.
Yeah, that's actually very, very important. And then did you have like people from the refugee camp that you maybe from another refugee camp, but maybe within Rwanda, maybe it could be your refugee camp or maybe other refugee camps? Do you have people that you knew that did the same thing that you were planning to do and then were successful, or it was just you trying to do something new in your life?
Honestly, I didn't know anyone. The only thing that I knew back then was that if you're smart, you have to do sciences,
Yeah.
So I did sciences as well. I did math, chemistry, and biology. So that's all that everyone knew, that, okay, if you're smart, you have to do sciences.
Of course.
If you do other than science, that means, you're not good enough. But, thinking about role models or people whom I could look up to, I don't think I had any. But I just, have that zone in my mind that, in my heart, that I can even be the first one. I can really do great.
Yeah. Did you pass your senior high school?
I did.
Oh, that's wonderful. You actually must have been a very, very smart student, because chemistry, biology, and mathematics it's not for everyone. The student who wants to study those subjects at junior high school or maybe senior high school, they must have been very, very smart. Okay, maybe I'm going to ask you another question. So what inspired you to start advocating for LAS, for the refugees? What made you have that in mind, and how did it build? How did you get the confidence to keep in it? Because we know it's a very difficult thing. You're advocating for people who are seen in the public as the minority, like you've just said, people who can't do anything big, anything different. They can't even pass an exam. So what made you have that confidence in advocating for other refugees in spaces that where people don't even listen? Was it hard? Was it easy for you? Where did you pick the confidence, and when did you even start to have such a mindset?
Oh, Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the idea came in 2017 when I was in senior 5. I had an opportunity to be sponsored by an organization, but I knew that opportunities wasn't for everyone. I know that there are people who, had good grades but couldn't pursue, their education. I knew that there were people who really were looking for opportunities but were not able to access them. But then I was young to do something, but I always had it in my mind that if I get the opportunity, I can help others, have the same chance. And so I remember back then in 2017, I had a friend of mine who also got an opportunity to be sponsored by, I believe it was Mastercard Foundation. And so she had an idea. And so she shared the idea with me that, we can do something in our community. And we looked for other people who shared the same interest or the same mission, if I would say. And we started writing up. I would say it was a proposal, but then we really didn't understand what we were doing. I think it was just the passion that we wanted to support the community. We wanted our young brothers and sisters to go to school. And I think we gave up, not really giving up, but we got discouraged because we didn't have anyone to support us or to encourage us that, you've got this, you can do it. I remember we tried to approach a person whom we thought could be supportive in a refugee camp. Unfortunately, she couldn't help us. So the idea stopped from there, but we've really tried our best. We had proposals written down and everything.
So when was that? Was it in high school?
It was in high school before we graduated. I think I was 17.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so fortunately I graduated and then I got the opportunity to study in Costa Rica under the Mastercard Foundation scholarship. And so when I went to Costa Rica, I think that's when I started now thinking about the idea that we had back then in 2017. And I think that what triggered my idea was, I would say, identity crisis. Because of course in Rwanda, nobody will really ask you a lot of questions about who you are, where you're coming from, because we literally look Rwandans, we speak Kinyarwanda. So even though people have biases around, about refugees, you can't feel that identity crisis as I felt it in Costa Rica. Because in Costa Rica, everyone wants to know where you're from, and I would say I'm a Congolese, born and raised in Rwanda, and it never used to make sense to people. They're like, you look Rwandan, you speak Kinyarwanda, how comes you're Congolese? And so like everyone, seemed to be interested, and I took time to really think about myself, self-awareness journey. I was like, who am I really? Okay, it's fine if people think I'm Rwandan, it's fine if people think I'm Congolese, but who is Solange apart from the identity, apart from the country I was born in, apart from the country I'm originated from? And so I would say that journey of self-awareness, knowing who I am and what people think about refugees, because there were some biases, not because they don't like refugees, but the assumptions around everybody thinks about refugees in a different way. So I felt like I have to do something. I have to let people know the right information. And so that's where my advocacy journey began in Costa Rica.
Oh yeah, that's really inspiring. Actually, you've talked about people asking you where you're coming from. You look Rwandan. How comes you're from Congo? It happens every time when a refugee and then you're in a country where you find different tribes, and it's really, really difficult to deal with. But that's what we're made for, and we actually go with it. It makes us strong. It makes us be very diverse as we can. you've talked about yourself being in Costa Rica and all that, and you are skipping something very important. We want to understand, we want to listen, we actually want to feel your joy. That story of you applying to join Costa Rica, how was it? Was it direct from high school? How did you ever get any rejections? How was that story? How did you end up in Costa Rica? And maybe how did you find Costa Rica as a refugee from, Rwanda? How did you even actually graduate from Costa Rica? How is that story? You want to, understand, especially that story of you applying and then getting accepted to go and study overseas far away from Rwanda.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that. So when I was young, I always wanted to be a doctor.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I even did sciences. I was like, I'll be a doctor. So when I graduated high school, I still thought that I wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately in Rwanda, if you're a refugee, you don't have, you can't be given a government scholarship.
Yeah.
So you either have to sponsor yourself or you look for, a scholarship or somebody to sponsor your education.
Yes.
But I'm this person who has always believed in education. So I knew that it's either education or education. There is not any other option that I have to be successful. Yes. Or to be, a person that I want to be. And so I always, I always wanted to do as many applications as I can. And I think one thing that I'm grateful for is that I was in an environment that really is favorable, for that. And so I tried a lot of applications. I applied a lot. And I got so many rejections. Yeah, I remember some of them. I applied at this university. Is it Haynhurst?
Hey, from Ghana. Yeah.
I don't know how they pronounce it. Yeah, from Ghana. Yeah. And I applied for nursing. And I reached the interview stage. But then my English was bad. Oh, so a person who interviewed me had to repeat himself for so many times because I couldn't understand, especially the accent was different. It was should I mention that? it was a Nigerian accent. No, it was a Nigerian accent. And so I couldn't really understand. My English was bad, honestly. Yeah. And so I think the person thought that I don't know what I'm doing. I think he even got frustrated because I really don't blame him because if I was him, I think I could have also given up. And so from that interview, I knew I've already lost. And so I also have also other experiences where I reached interviews but I couldn't make through. I also applied for some opportunities and I couldn't even reach at the interview stage.
Yeah. And
one thing that still surprises me is that I didn't score huge grades, unfortunately, but I still had that courage to apply. There are opportunities that I could apply, even people who got full points couldn't apply for.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I got that courage from, but I think it's just that I knew what I wanted and I wasn't, discouraged by anyone. So I kept applying and I applied at Earth University. So I kept, really trying different links, different opportunities. And when I applied at Earth University, I honestly told myself that this is going to be the last application that I'm doing because I think I was tired already. Fortunately, I was shortlisted for interview and the aptitude test. And I did well and I was selected. That was, I think, 2 years, almost 3 years after I've graduated high school. And I got selected.
How was it for you to see you being selected to go and attend another university after 3 years you've been out of high school?
Honestly, I wasn't expecting it. Even though I kept applying, I think growing up in a refugee camp has a lot of disadvantages, and one of them is low self-esteem. So you always think you can't do it. Even when you're eligible, you can't believe you can do it.
Yeah.
So even though I kept trying, it wasn't that I'm confident that I'll make it. It was just that, let me do my part. Let me just, apply. And so when I got selected, one thing that really surprised me, and I tell it to everyone during the interview. So we had two interview sessions. One was a group interview, and the other one was like individual.
Yes.
Now the group interview, it was a group, of course, and so the people who were in my group could speak English that I can't even understand what they're saying.
Oh my God.
I'll be like, these people didn't study in Africa, because the accent was American. Like, you could see the confidence, really. And then I told myself that if I was the people interviewing us, I don't think I would select myself. Because, like my English, trying to join the sentence, it wasn't really something easy. And so seeing myself selected, it was just the two of us being selected that time. It was something that really I couldn't believe. And I think it's something that really built something big in me, which is, like believing in myself. And, the fact that you had a poor educational background doesn't mean that you're not smart, and so I would say that I was really excited, and I was just looking forward to seeing my life abroad, from a refugee camp to boarding the the plane for the first time.
So when you received the news that you've been selected for the scholarship, I'm glad I watched your video somewhere. The admission is telling you that you've been given a scholarship and the joy and whatever. So when you went back home and talked to your parents and you told them that, you know what, I've been selected to go and study in Costa Rica, and I believe maybe Costa Rica is far away, like thousands of miles away from Rwanda. How were they? Were they into it, or they were trying to, to deny you the opportunity?
Well, I would say they were excited. They also couldn't believe it. Okay, they knew I'm this person who try a lot of things, but again, they couldn't believe that I'll try things at the extent that I leave the country, to study. And I would say, especially my mom was a bit scared. Because I'm the last born. So I think she was wondering how would she survive. She's still young. Again, it's her first time to leave the country. But I think those thoughts of parents, not that she doesn't want you to go, but just thinking, what will happen if she leaves? How is she gonna survive? And again, it's somewhere that we don't know, anyone. It's not a country that would say, oh, I know somebody who lives there. And again, the language,
oh my God.
Even though my English was bad, but adding a new language was also something that was terrifying. They're like, how will you even communicate? Costa Rica, they use Spanish, you speak in Rwanda, your English is not even, can't your little English can't even help. So I would say they were excited, but also a bit worried.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. I know most parents wouldn't allow their children to travel far away to a country where they don't even have a friend, where they don't even know someone who lived there. It's really very difficult for a parent. Even if I was the one, I would really give it time to think about it. I couldn't just let my child go to that far away. So I hope that was a very good experience for you.
It was.
Another question, maybe the second last question of this call, which is you mentioned about how you got a scholarship, and maybe briefly talked about the experience you had in Costa Rica. We want to understand, how was it like for you to study in Costa Rica? Millions of meters, like thousands of miles away from Rwanda. How was it like to study in Costa Rica in a different language? As a refugee, did you find friends? Was it easy for you to navigate and, get friends? Were you ever traumatized because of where you're coming from? We want to understand that story. Can you walk us through?
Yeah, I would say it was a beautiful experience. Tough as well, especially learning a new language. In Costa Rica, they use Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
So having to navigate a new language, I think that was the hardest part. And so adding it, I think there is this imposter syndrome and low self-esteem that comes with a language barrier. So if you can't be able to communicate easily, or you can't speak a language fluently, there's always something, you feel deep that, you're not enough. And even people around you, like when you can't communicate your ideas, when you can't, say what you want to say, sometimes people think that maybe you're not smart enough, or maybe you're shy, or maybe, you're just there. So I think that was the most challenging part. The first year was tough, I wouldn't lie. Because I started wondering, who am I? Of course, I'm a refugee. I'm battling, identity crisis. I'm, thinking about where I come from, and, people around are not, trusting me that I can do the work, But I would say that after the first year, that's when I realized that, I'm more than that. I'm a great person. I'm a leader. I'm smart, and I think having friends was also helpful, especially, when you can't communicate.
Yeah.
Having people who can help you, support you with academics. I think that was something that helped me as well to navigate that whole process. And I think in Costa Rica, I loved especially the education system of Earth University. I was doing agriculture sciences, but I think they teach you more than that. They transform you into a leader. They teach you about business. They teach you about community development, confidence. And I think it's a place that can expose you to a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's a place where you can be what you really want to be. If you decide that I want to be a farmer, I want to pursue the agricultural path, you can do that. But if you also want to say, I want to be a leader, you can also choose to do that. So I think that's where I really started building my skills, whether it's communication, whether it's confidence and leadership skills, and all those together really helped me to be an advocate that I am today.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. Were you at one point ever in a situation where you need to talk to someone, you need help as a refugee, or maybe someone from a minority background? And how did you, if so, how did you try to get this help? Were you supported, or it kept in you and until maybe it dissolved, or until you met someone maybe in the compound and then you talked to them? Was that kind of like administrative help from the university?
I would say that at the beginning, it was a bit hard because this is a sensitive topic that you can't easily share with anyone, because I don't think people understand the situation unless they're in the situation. But I would say that what really helped me was to interact with other refugees, because there were other refugees from different countries, from South Sudan, from DRC, from Zambia, from all over the globe. So I think interacting with them and, starting to have open conversations of what do we feel, how do we feel, what do we think? And we also created a group, if I'd say like a community of refugees, and we started raising awareness. And I think seeing people trying, coming to finally understand who are refugees, beyond the status, the refugee status, was something that really helped me to heal, because what really used to hurt me wasn't how I feel about myself. It was about how others, you know, feel or how others see me, and having to finally convince people about what refugees are able to do, and actually having to do something visible that people can see that, oh, okay, Solange is a refugee, but she's also a leader. She's also someone who can do public speaking. She has talents. I think that's helped me. And I think also the administration really put a lot of effort in that, because I remember there is this time where I was invited to go to the presidential house alongside other refugees, where we discussed about inclusion for refugees. And so I feel like the school also tried to expose us to different opportunities and to really try their level best that we can be able to lead and we can be able to be seen, and not just on campus, but also outside campus. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's really helpful then. So I want to ask you in just like a few sentences, or maybe like 1, 2, 3 words, how do you rate or maybe say about your education far away from home with a scholarship and all that? Was it good, bad, and in any way you can describe it?
I would say it was life-changing, because I don't think I would be the Solange that people know if it wasn't about going to Costa Rica for education. I think there is confidence that comes with education.
Yeah.
And there is trust that comes with education. I've seen it a lot of times, whether it's applying for different opportunities, when people see that you're a student and plus you're studying abroad, there is this kind of trust that comes with, your education background. So I think education has really, really transformed me, has shaped me, has made me a leader, has boosted my confidence. And I think education itself was a platform, for me to be able to do what I'm capable of doing.
Oh, so the main word is education here, and the education.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that means you strongly recommend any person who is maybe struggling to find education, struggling to do something else in their life, maybe they are refugees living in the camp, you strongly recommend them to do exactly what you did?
Absolutely, because I believe that, especially when you're a refugee, honestly, I wouldn't say it's the only way, but I think it's a sure deal. If you go to school, you become someone that you never thought that you could be. Because maybe if you could have asked me 5 years ago that I could travel to more than 5 countries, I wouldn't have even thought about it. If you could have asked me if I dream of going to UN headquarters and being invited to speak at global events, I wouldn't have even, I would have just laughed. I would just have laughed at you. But I think all these have been possible because of education. Me starting an initiative of supporting other refugees was just because I saw how transformative education has been in my life. And so I really wanted other refugees to also be transformed through education. And I would say that even if you might not see it now, that education is transforming you, it is transforming you, maybe indirectly. And you might not see it today, but maybe tomorrow or next year or next 2 years. So I think it's worth doing, it's worth applying. It doesn't matter how many rejections that you get. I got acceptance after 3 years. So I would really recommend that, the fact that you're getting rejections, it doesn't mean that you're not smart. Sometimes it's just the struggles that we face as refugees. Sometimes it's just because of the poor education background. But we are lucky that we now have organizations like Refugee Youth Changemakers, like Kepler through Iteme, there are various organizations I'm speaking in Rwanda, and even across the globe that are willing to support you, navigate all those application process. So, we don't have excuses. It's time to really study and be transformed through education.
There is always no excuses. It's just you to make up your mind, and then these organizations are always very ready to receive you and give you whatever you need to make sure that you complete that goal of education. You actually talked about something very sensitive. I want briefly, maybe for us to understand, me and the people who will be viewing this, who will be watching and listening to this podcast. You mentioned that it's about education that you've been able to travel to. You mentioned 5 countries, but I believe as a person who has known you for quite a number of years, you've traveled to many countries. So I have a question, a more sensitive question. So you've traveled to those countries. Is it because of you being a refugee in education, or is it because of some other kind of a cause? Because you can travel, maybe you travel from here to Europe just for you tour the places and all that. Is it like a purpose of you being a refugee, championing for education and other advocacy situations within? And what are some of those countries, and what conferences were they that made you travel to those countries? Just like briefly, you may not mention all of them, but you can just give like a brief kind of overview.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been doing advocacy for the past 4 or 5 years, if I remember so well. And I advocate for education. If you know me, you know that I champion for education. Yeah. I love education, and I think I have tangible facts. As I mentioned, like who I am today is because of education. So I would really want every refugee to have the same chance, to go to school and, show the world what they're able to do. So some of those events that I've been able to attend, one is Global Refugee Forum that took place in Geneva, Switzerland. And I think that was also a great moment to meet other refugees. In case you don't know, there are great leaders who are refugees and who are doing great things. So you get to see them, when you attend those events, you even get, shocked and surprised. You're like, wow, people are doing great things. So if you're there thinking that, we are refugees, just know that there are people out there who are refugees like you, who are refugees like me. And they are still, trying to do great things in their communities. And I would say another highlight would be maybe the African Forum for Displacement that took place in Ghana. And also an event that I attended recently at the UN headquarters. And I would say that all those events, it's not a tour. I don't travel for tourism. I travel to make sure that refugee voices are heard in those big rooms, and to make sure that at least 1 or 2 or 3 or thousands of refugees can get an opportunity just because I've spoken at those events, and to really make sure that refugees are not just invited, at the table, but they are considered as, equal partners, and their ideas are considered in decision making.
Okay, that's really interesting. I thought you travel for tourism, because I've been seeing you travel and I'm like, oh my God, she's really becoming great. But now that I've got to understand that you travel because of our well-being, that's so kind of you, and that's so inspiring. So now that you've been interviewing other people on this same podcast, I know you've interviewed many of them. Some of them I've watched the podcast, and some of them I haven't. So I want to ask you a very simple question, and it should be brief in answering. What stories from those people you've been hosting in this podcast, what are some of those stories that got stuck with you the most? And how have they changed the way you see your own role in this movement of advocacy? You've been hosting people here. People have different stories. Myself having a different story. I've seen people you host have different stories. What is that kind of a statement? What is that kind of a story that made you, see the perspective that you heard trying to change to a different direction?
That's a great question. I would say if there is something that I enjoy doing is hosting refugee leaders, because I get inspired every single day that I interview a person. And I would summarize it in this way. One thing that really stood up with me is when we start a conversation, they all start with challenges, a lot of challenges in accessing education, challenges in, accessing opportunities, challenges in, getting jobs. But at the end, they all end up, highlighting their contribution, towards addressing those challenges. So one thing that really stood up with me is that refugees are not waiting to be supported. They're already supporting themselves. They just need people to, to put hands together so that they can really transform their communities. So I would say that something that really inspires me and that keeps me going is to see refugees, being part of the solutions, because we've had a lot of biases around, that refugees are just waiting for charity, they're waiting for people to support them. But me hosting people who are doing the real things, who are supporting refugees to go to school, who are supporting refugees to access job opportunities, who are doing great things in their communities, it gives me hope that, the future of refugees is great, and that, refugees themselves are leaders, not for tomorrow, for now.
Yeah, that's. I actually came to understand that your observation is quite very, very smart. Every podcast that I've watched from this very podcast, or maybe other podcasts where they host refugee youth leaders, they always start with challenges. What does this teach us? It teaches us that there's no refugee who has that kind of a swift life. It always has challenges, and mostly from the state. So it's about you to wake up and have something you do to make sure that kind of a challenge is no longer a challenge. However, it's a motivation to keep you going and actually help other people, other refugees from different communities, to be as well as you can see yourself. Coming to the end of this podcast, I just have a simple question for you, just like one question or maybe two questions. What is that kind of an advice you can give to the stakeholders who are willing to support refugees in maybe private sector? It can be government, it can be NGOs. What kind of an advice do you have for them to make sure that they do a very big role in education of refugees within Africa?
That's a great question, and I think it aligns so well with my work as an advocate. I would say that invest in refugees. It's not something that I would beg for, because I know that, the impact of refugee-led organizations is visible.
Yes.
If you go to different refugee camps, you'll find refugee-led organizations that are doing business. You'll find refugees who have built schools. You'll find refugees who are, businessmen, businesswomen. So all that they need is you to trust them and you to invest in them. And just trust them, give them a chance, and they'll really surprise you.
Yeah, that's important. The work that refugee-led organizations are doing in communities is really visible. And if you really visit the refugee camps in different countries, you really see that this work is touching people's lives, and it's just about investing in them. Yeah. So the last question for you, maybe not the last. I have a simple question. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be?
Wow.
How do you want to be remembered? We've seen people doing great work, and we've remembered them for that great work they've been doing. So you are, having a goal for your life. So let's say you can no longer do whatever you're doing right now. How do you want people to remember you? How do you want people, if someone has heard about Solange, how do you want them to, reflect you? As, take an example, do you want to be remembered as someone who fought for education? Do you want to be remembered as someone who always encouraged, students to go to school, all those kinds of situations? How do you want to be remembered?
I would I would say that I want to be remembered as someone who believe in change. No matter your background, no matter how overlooked you are, change is possible. So I really want people to always say, or to always think, that if Solange was able to do it, I can also make it. Change is possible, no matter how far you can reach, no matter how bad your situation can look, change is still possible.
Okay, thank you. From today, I'll actually be remembering you as someone who really wants to see change. So that's interesting for me to listen to. And thank you for your time for today's podcast. It has been a very, very interesting stories from you, and I hope as people listen to this podcast, as they watch, they will be transformed by your own stories, and maybe they can see the value of what we are doing with this very podcast. So now that we've reached to the end of this incredible podcast with Solange, who is a leader who wants to be remembered as someone who wants to see change in communities, someone who found herself in Rwanda as a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. This actually reminds us of the courage and the vision and the leadership that she truly took to, pass through all this life. And she actually is doing well. She's advocating for the refugees within Africa and other countries. So we hope her story has inspired you. And we actually called you to always come and check on our podcasts page on our website at Refugee Youth Changemakers. You can find the website at refugeeusYCM.org, and then you can see all these podcasts that we've been hosting over the months, over the years. And so you can, take time and listen to all of them as you do something. You can just be listening to these stories from different people. And we actually also call people who are looking forward to, investing in refugees to actually invest in such a work, because we know it really takes courage for us to get these people to listen to their voices and actually make them available for you to listen. It's not always an easy thing for someone to share their story, but these people, because of the passion and the love they have for other people they know who are in these communities where we come from, they do this to make sure that they understand that it is very possible. So at Refugee Changemakers, this is what we do. You can take time, go to our website at Refugee Youth. You can also navigate to the podcasts, and you listen to all of our podcasts that we've been hosting over the months. Until next time, keep amplifying the refugee youth voices and standing for the change we need in those communities. I remain Prince, and we shall see you in the next episode.